Hello, Abby. I'm so happy to have you on the Tech for Non-Techies podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophia, for having me. It's a pleasure.
So first of all, why don't you tell the audience what it is that you do today?
Yes, so I'm the CEO of a company called Zaggle. We are a SaaS fintech company digitizing spends through automated workflows. So we work with businesses, enterprises, and mid-market companies to digitize their spends, any spends that they incur for their employees, when they pay out to their vendors, any channel payments that they make. We have a software platform that we marry with payment instruments like credit cards, corporate credit cards, prepaid cards, and that then becomes a complete platform for them to be able to track their spends, monitor their spends, ensure there is compliance, reduced leakage, higher efficiency. So that's the whole value proposition.
Cool. And so how is that different from like the existing software? Because I'm thinking like I use Zero, which sort of does that if you integrate everything.
Yeah, so the three or four big differences, Sophia. One, we marry payment instruments very deeply with software, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our API integrations, whether it's with the Visas, the MasterCards of the world, the Rupees of the world in India here, or whether it's your ERP platform, whether it's SAP and Oracle Fusion or any ERP platform that you have, is very deep. So you have the payment piece on the one side, you got the credit piece on the second side, and you got the ERP, the software ERP and the Salesforce type of platforms, the
And what's an
CRM platforms.
ERP? Sorry, can you tell us?
ERP is a enterprise resource planning platform. Most companies have some sort of an ERP which allows them to digitize their accounting. So that's the book in which companies these days keep their accounts. SAP is the most popular one, but you've got Oracle, you've got a whole host of platforms. We integrate with all of them on the one side. We integrate with the bank partners on the other side in the networks. And as a company or as a founder of the company, you are able to see where is your money being spent in real time across project codes, across cost codes, across geographies, at a click of a button, right? And you can set up controls. You can say for this particular project code, no matter what, I don't want to exceed $100,000, for example, right? And once you set that budget, all the expenses then have to fall within those limits, and you can do subcategories, etc., which makes it much more easy. The main problem that's happening, Sophia, is the decision of who's to be paid, how much to be paid, when to be paid, how to be paid, is all sitting with business. The software today sits with the accountant, right? So the moment she receives an invoice or a bill, the accountant, she just flounders. She doesn't know whether to say yes, no, part process, not process. And then there's a flurry of emails and Excel sheets. And we eliminate that. We bring it onto a digital platform where all the communication interaction happens through a single platform. And then the payment also gets executed through the platform.
Amazing. So does that mean that actually businesses get paid faster because of what you're doing?
Absolutely.
Okay. In that case, you're doing God's work, because I have spent so much time chasing invoices from really large companies because, as you said,
there you go.
Like the accounting department sits in the arse end of nowhere. And, the fancy people I did work for, they're going to be like in New York or in LA, and they
Correct.
don't even know each other. Amazing. So, okay, tell me, how did you get into this?
Well, it was just accident, to be very honest. As much as I'd like to, describe my career as by design, I just graduated as an engineer way back in 1999, and then I was looking for
computer science, sort of software engineering,
electrical. Yeah, electrical engineering.
Okay.
So, but I was never good at that. Let me be honest. I just had a good time in my my undergrad days. Met my wife there. We had a good time. So we were busy dating each other rather than working on studies, right? So
Excellent.
just landed one job with Citi on the tech side. and didn't know much either on banking or tech. I was 21, right? So I was really, really
Cute. So you're
young.
21, you're in love, you don't know much about anything, and they're offering to you some money if you
Yeah,
turn up to work, and you're like, okay, fine.
yeah,
Okay, good.
precisely. So
Cool.
I end up at Citi, don't have a clue about anything, and then I started off coding. I hated it. As I didn't hate it, I was not good at it. Let me put it this way. Right? There were a bunch of
So
other
it
people.
hated you.
It hated me, yeah. There were a bunch of other people who were far better than me at doing that. But folks at Citi were smart enough to figure out that, hey, this young man has a lot of curiosity. He wants to understand how business works, how banking works, and he wants to understand how the software that we're working on, it was called Paling 32, it's still in use. How is this software helping banks and their customers manage their cash better? So they basically decided that I'd go out in different countries, implement the solution. So I traveled around the world, places like Morocco, Cote d'Ivoire, Algeria, and then I started off, becoming a implementation consultant. So I traveled around the world. I traveled to Brazil, Bangladesh, parts of Botswana, was in Indonesia for 6 months, in the UK for a year, with ING Bank for a year and a half, in Brussels. So did this before business school, and sort of like moved into the intersection of tech and banking just by chance. And I just loved it. I saw that there was a huge opportunity to digitize, a huge opportunity to make a change. And it was fairly straightforward in my view, at least then. I thought, hey, banks have tons of money and they really suck at tech. So if you can you can
Still.
help them with that, you're gonna make tons of money. That was as silly a thought as that, right? And even in
It's
school,
still true today, though. Banks have tons of money, and most of them really suck at tech.
that's true. And if you can help them with that, you can make a fair amount of money. And so that was the premise. And then I joined Citi after business school again. And then came back to India with Citi, worked here for a couple of years. And then about 11 and a half years ago, I had this opportunity to join Zaggle at a very nascent stage. The
Wait,
company
hang
was
on.
just
Was
six
this
months.
before or after business school?
This was after business school.
Wait, hang
Yeah.
on. So basically, skip, because I know that
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who are listening to this podcast who either have MBAs or they're thinking about doing an MBA, or they are happy they didn't do one or full of regret. so,
Okay.
so I kind of want to delve into that. So basically, you did all this banking stuff. You realize that banks have loads of money, don't understand tech. You're like, this is what I'm going to do. And then do you go to business school? What happens?
Yes. So I realized, Sophia, that if while banks have tons of money and I can help them with the tech, I didn't understand business well, right? I pretended to understand business well as a consultant, but I really didn't understand business that well. And I said, hey, look, the older you get, the tougher it is to get away by saying, "Hey, I'm a young person trying to learn." Right? That logic does not hold true at 28. It worked at 21. So I said, I need some formal, proper, high quality education, right? And what better place to go to than Chicago Booth, right? So I got lucky. They accepted me, and it was a very conscious call that I may not go back to formal education ever again. So I wanted to do a 2-year course and just get my hands dirty on a variety of things. And Booth, of course, was great because I could choose my courses, right? I didn't need to be stuck to a particular framework. So, and then I did, for example, in business school, I did an international management lab with Barclays. So that was building the Sub-Saharan Africa microfinance entry strategy for Barclays. So we spent 10 of us at University of Chicago, spent 3 months in Botswana and Joburg, and sometime in London to design this strategy, right? And Barclays invested $20 million in this.
Amazing.
So Yes, it was an amazing
Sounds like a really
experience. And
productive time to counteract what you were doing in your undergrad, which was falling in love and having fun. Here you are building microfinance in Africa in your spare time. Okay.
yes, yes,
Well done,
it
Abby. I'm
was.
impressed.
Thank you. It was probably the most impactful work that I had done till date. Right? So it was something which really um, we could see that this could make a big difference, right?
Mhm.
And from there, I did my summers also with Barclays, which was in trade finance strategy in London. But in 2007, the pound crashed, so it didn't make sense to have a dollar loan and a pound salary. That
That's still the
concept.
case today, 2023. I'm just telling you, there are some problems in the UK right now.
In 2006, it was a brilliant idea. It seemed brilliant to be earning in pounds and paying off a dollar loan. And
It's
in
been downhill
2007,
since then.
yeah. So I went back to the US and completed my MBA. And I said, hey, look, but I was committed to stay in this space around. There was no word like fintech in 2006, 7. It was just emerging, right? So even the phrase wasn't there so much. But I basically knew I wanted to be in this space. And Citibank
Mhm,
seemed to be a good
mhm,
bet as any
mhm.
in those days. So that's
So
how
actually,
I
after
joined.
so after business school, you came back to City, and then
Correct.
tell me so like you're working this job, you've got loads of student loans, you're getting paid loads of money, and then at some point you think, I do not want any of this money. I do not want any of this like recognition and prestige. I'm gonna go off by myself and climb up into the darkness and just see what happens. Like, which sounds like an insane choice, but like entrepreneurship at the early stages is an insane choice when you have, pretty cushy jobs. So what happened? Who
Yes,
hit
it
you over
is.
the head?
So, so it was an itch. I always, even in my first few jobs, I always used to chat up with my work colleagues and friends and say, "Hey, this is where the company should go. This is what we should do. This is what the CEO should do." Right? And they used to always pull my leg, saying, "Hey, if you're so smart, why aren't you becoming the CEO? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Go for it. Why
Mm-hmm.
don't you walk into her cabin and tell her this is what you should do?" And I was half tempted to doing actually that, right, in those years. So this itch to actually try to make the big decisions, actually get an opportunity to make the real impact, was very much in me from a very early stage, right? And
Mm-hmm.
once you get a certain stage, Sophia, in life, you start to say, okay, you graduated from business school, you work for a couple of years after that, and then you're saying, hey, if it's now or never. The
Mm-hmm.
older you get, the tougher it's going to become to be able to, take risks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have way too much to lose, the sunk cost, all those things. So when the Zaggle opportunity popped up, the criteria for me was that, hey, look, I want to, get into a company where I did not have money or capital to invest, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
had the good part was there were a couple of institutional investors already involved here. One of them was the founder of one of the funds was a fellow Booth alum. That was comforting. The founder of the company itself was somebody who had spent a lot of time in the US, been at NYU Stern, PwC. So when I met these gentlemen, I got a sense that yes, they know what they're talking. And at worst, what's going to happen is that this is not going to take off, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be one of those cases where I'd be left having to deal with some, issues which are other than business issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was very important for me, that I take a plunge and work with people that I have, comfort and trust
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the ethics, in terms of the values. Of course, you want to have a lot of debate, a lot of, intellectual jostling, but, you don't want issues on the ethics front and the
Mm-hmm.
values front.
Mm-hmm.
And that once I was, sort of clear that that won't be a problem, I said, let me take a plunge, give it 4 or 5 years, see
And
how
so
it
what is it
goes.
that they offered? So they were like, can you just tell us, like, where was that
Yeah,
company at the time? And the reason why I really want to explore this is because there are some people who want to start their own companies, and there
great.
are other people who want to join some sort of fast growing company. And in general, I think that's a really good path to entrepreneurship. If you want to start your own company, is basically work in somebody else's startup first. And that's what I did. And that
Yeah,
really helped. But then the problem is, how do you identify something that has legs and that it's going to go somewhere? And that's basically
great.
the same question that seed investors are asking. So I think like when you're an early stage company employee, the kind of questions you should be asking are the same kinds of questions that investors are asking at that stage. It's like, is this going to go somewhere? Because
Yes.
either you're investing your money or you're investing your time. And actually, time is the one non-renewable resource. So I would actually argue that that decision about how to invest your time, that is a far more risky decision than capital, because, if you're a smart, hardworking person, you can just get capital from somewhere. So talk me
That's
through what they were offering, where they were at that, and where they were when they met you.
Right. So the company was just incorporated. They had 4 or 5 months of runway or existence, so to say. Zaggle was about 5 months old. Those initial proof of concept was just forming. There were about 6, 7 employees. So it was a very early stage setup, right? And the founder at that stage was running another firm, right, in a different space. But he understood the space well. He wanted to enter the space. He saw the potential, and he was looking along with the investors, a CEO, somebody who could basically take the keys and run the show, right? So
But
I
he
had.
didn't want to go and be the CEO. He wanted to stay in his job. So he was looking, okay, cool, got it.
So he was already running a company. He was a founder of a company, and Zaggle was incubated in this company, right? So the parent company and Zaggle was incubated in this company, and it made sense because that was into a lot of brand merchandising space, right? So they worked with corporates as well, and they worked on rewards and recognition programs for these companies, but it was all about physical goods, so cups, mugs, t-shirts, jackets, whereas Zaggle was all about digital solutions. And that's where it made sense to look at bringing in somebody who understood payments and tech and product. At that stage, I was product head for a product called Premier Miles, a credit card called Premier Miles. And that had worked very well in India. Premier Miles was India's #2 travel credit card. And
Amazing.
so I got a chance to.
You joined as CEO straight away.
Great.
So just so we can sum up, so essentially you saw that there was some money there, not a lot, but there was some money. There was some sort of proof of concept, still early stage, but it was beyond a piece of paper. There was a team, so there was somebody for you to lead, but it wasn't huge. And also the opportunity was to be the CEO, so to really make a huge impact. And you saw that these people, you basically thought that they were good people. So you thought, okay, I'm going to take a chance and go do that. And that was how long ago?
That was 2012, February. I joined in February 2012.
Wow.
So it's about a little over 11 years, 11 and a half years.
So what's happening now, Avi? 11 years later, you're still there. You're alive. You're looking good. So
thank you.
What's happening? Give us the update. What's happening in the company today?
Well, the company is scaled up a lot today. We are about 300 people today as we speak.
In India?
We have in India, yeah. We have about 2,400 corporate customers. We clocked about 80 million in revenue last year, and this year we should be about 100+ million. We had about $7 US dollars, about 8 million in EBITDA, and we've been PAT positive for the last 4 years. PAT as in profit after tax. So we don't believe in a lot of the contrived matrices, Sophia, like contribution margin 1, 2. There are a lot of these matrices that float in the startup world. We only understand top line, gross margins, EBITDA, and profit after tax, right? So these are the four.
And so I'm curious about this. Do you think that they're like all these kind of like bullshit metrics are coming out of Silicon Valley, and kind of in more conservative markets, people are still like, how much revenue is coming in, how much profit is staying, like pretty simple math.
Yes, and what's happened is after the recent probably year and a half ago, when things started to sort of the tech valuations worldwide started to drop. It happened in India as well, and a lot of the investors, a lot of the ecosystem people said, "Hang on, what's happening here, right? We've gone so far away from basic business, basic accounting, basic finance." And a lot of these matrices just don't make any sense anymore, right? Because those matrices are so business specific, those matrices are so industry specific and time specific, right? A lot of assumptions are baked in that this is what's going to happen in the future, when the reality is nobody really knows how the future is going to pan out. And so a lot of the investors and board members, etc., taking these companies back to basic accounting and basic finance matrices.
And also, some of them were totally bullshit, because I think, I mean, the WeWork saga, when they tried to IPO, and one of their metrics was community adjusted EBITDA. And did you know about this?
Yes.
I mean, I literally can't believe that like we are filming a podcast and making jokes about accounting metrics, but this is how we roll here.
Yes, that's true. And
I mean,
and the world is a funny place. When that whole saga was playing out, everybody drank that Kool-Aid, right? I mean, somebody would say community adjusted EBITDA, and the person on the other side, even though she knew that this was BS, wouldn't actually say it out. It was true for all of us. So,
but it's scary. It's a bit like, in a different way, the metaverse. So I was just at the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity, and thankfully this year, everybody kind of just ignored it, apart from the fact that like Facebook is now called Meta. It's like kind of the thing that you don't mention because it's a bit of like an embarrassing thing. Whereas the year before, because Facebook put so much money behind this concept, they sponsored all these panels. There's like a lot of content sponsorship on how the metaverse was going to change everything. And I remember sort of saying, well, I can see applications in like industrials, definitely in gaming, warfare. Like I can see applications, but me as a person to just hang out there and have virtual burgers with people, like with my friends who don't have legs, I don't want to do that. I don't see that happening. But it's really hard to say that and to question it when everybody around you is being like, no, you don't get it. And I think it's the same thing with these kinds of ridiculous metrics, when you're like, hang on, but isn't it money in and money out? Like, isn't that basically that? Isn't, because like we're entrepreneurs, we look at the bank balance. Like I don't like our bank balance doesn't care about funky metrics. We care about what's coming in, and do we have enough to invest and to pay our people, basically.
Absolutely. And bang on, Sophia. And that's the reality of it really hits home when the music stops, the funding stops, and then you got to make your business work without that money. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have realized this. The sad part is this cycle, repeats itself every 7, 8, 10 years. So I think somewhere, at least in the advice that I would give to young entrepreneurs is, hey, look, keep your feet to the ground. All those who tell you that a lot of funky matrices will help you raise money, be wary, because the same investor is going to ask you very tough questions when the music stops.
And also, I guess just this whole thing that I think we learned a lot at the University of Chicago, which is just critical thinking. Like,
Absolutely.
think for yourself, have your own brain. And even if everybody is around you is talking about community adjusted EBITDA or virtual burgers, just think, is this an actual thing or
Right.
is it just hype?
Absolutely, absolutely. So never. One of the things that's held me in good stead is never to be afraid of asking good questions, and being contrarian. Right? If you are contrarian, and if you're sure why you're being contrarian, not just for the sake of it, go ahead. Even if the whole world feels that you're a stupid person at that moment, so be it. Right?
Mm-hmm. Well, so now let's talk about this kind of technical, non-technical divide, because you've straddled both. And obviously, to have a company, you need to have, the tech people, you need to have the business people. So when you are, let's say, recruiting somebody on the business side, how much do you expect them to know about software and innovation?
It depends on the role, right? But it's become almost like hygiene that you should
Mm-hmm.
understand tech. You may see the biggest mistake that people make is they assume tech equal to coding or
Mm-hmm.
programming, right?
Yep.
And that was a mistake that even I, in my early years of my career, used to make. And then once I started to work more, I realized that actually I'm a fairly decent techie, right? But I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
great programmer, right? So
Mm-hmm.
first of all, that's a very important distinction for people to make. That coding is not, uh, the entire tech
Mm-hmm.
universe. It's a very important part of it, but not everybody may have the same inclination towards it. Right? The second is, do you really have uh, a love for tech or a liking for tech? Have you
Mm-hmm.
embraced it, or are you trying to run away from it?
Mm-hmm.
Because, Sophia, the reality of today's world is every business is a tech business, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just cannot survive, or at least you cannot thrive in today's day and age without embracing tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it shows in how you respond to ideas which are, tech enabled, ideas where the tech component is high. And if your approach to those concepts, like a lot of times these days I ask people is, what do you think about ChatGPT and AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is, hey, it's complete hype, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be a little skeptical and wary about this person and say, hey, look, this person either the person has a PhD in AI, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to defer to his or her judgment and say,
Mm-hmm.
please educate me. You obviously are a master of the
Mm-hmm.
subject, so I'm not going to try and argue with you that much. But assuming that the person on the other side is not an expert, I'd want to understand really why they would have this view that AI is complete BS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also subscribe to the fact that AI, too much of hype is being created around
Mm-hmm.
AI, a little bit like Meta and
Mm-hmm.
metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a lot for businesses and the society to gain, and there are certain very real risks around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I would want to actually see how the person approaches that question, right? And how much of that is genuine and how much of that is just, very superficial. I
Mm-hmm.
think basis that you can get to know a lot about the person's attitude towards tech,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what
Interesting.
matters the most.
And I like the thing that you're saying about technical or understanding technology versus coding, because I certainly made that mistake. And I think it is probably the most common mistake that, okay, I'm not technical. That means that I don't know how to code, so I don't know anything about technology. And to be honest, the name of my company probably also propagates that, tech for non-techies. But then people identify with that. They're like, okay, I'm not a techie, like I don't know how to code. I've noticed that there are people who are coders who actually do know how to write code, but they don't have a holistic understanding of technology,
Yes,
which
yes.
I have found absolutely mind-blowing, because I used to think that, okay, if you know how to, I don't know, code Ruby on Rails, or whatever. That means
Right.
you understand tech sort of in general.
You're right. That's not true. That's
And
not
that's
true at
not
all.
true. So
That's
what's
not true
your
at
view
all.
on this?
See, I think it's curiosity. It's your attitude towards things, right? You could be a coder. You could be somebody who's spent all your life doing that. But if you don't have that inherent curiosity about new things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tech or non-tech, you're just going to go to, your office or your workplace, do your work for 8 or 12 hours, and then just chuck that laptop or whatever device that you have and say, I'm done, right, for the day. And you have switched off from trying to think about anything to do with technology or anything to do with these things. I think the fundamental issue or the problem is when people just get intimidated by tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest challenge that I feel a lot of people who are not techies is the same fear that you have when you're trying to ride the bicycle for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you've crossed a certain age and you don't know how to drive a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be really worried how to do it until you start to get into doing that with
Mm-hmm.
maybe, expert advice and support. So if people get their hands, if you really want to get into the tech world and the tech ways of thinking, you need to start talking, you need to start reading, you need to start engaging with that community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once you start doing that, each one of us has different ways of learning. Somebody is
Mm-hmm.
very good at learning by reading podcasts. It could be, a podcast like yours. It could be just meeting people who understand this stuff well, online or offline. And once you're able to start doing that, I think you would be in a much better place. But if you're fundamentally a non-curious person, then whether you're a techie or a coder or a non-coder just doesn't matter. And good for you. I mean, I'm not judging people who are non-curious. Maybe they're actually
I mean,
better
I
off.
am. Clearly, you're a much sweeter person than me, but I totally am. I mean, the world is so interesting. And to be honest, like, we're living in this particular time, but if I had been alive, I don't know, in the 18th century, I would have been really fascinated by, the spinning jenny, because it's
Right.
human ingenuity. It's human
Yeah.
ingenuity moving things forward. Maybe before that it would be like, oh, what is the latest farming method? I need to know. Because it's just interesting how people come up with things, how people collaborate, and how people make something new out of nothing. Right now, we're doing it with digital technologies. And, later, maybe we'll be doing it with qubits. But so now, as we wrap up, I'd love to know what is next for you and Zaggle?
Well, we are in the process of going IPO. So we should be a listed company fairly soon, fingers crossed. And that's going to be a very big milestone. I say, to a lot of people who ask me, what's the big deal about an IPO? I say, hey, an IPO is like a marriage, right? You get married only once, so
So
you
you're going
can
to
get
have
married,
two.
right? but it is a big deal. So that's what's on our cards. At some point in the coming quarters, Sophia, for sure, we'll expand globally. We are looking at markets. We are working very closely with Visa to actually piggyback on their knowledge and networks in a lot of markets. We're looking at Southeast Asia. We are looking at Middle East, the MENA region, as Visa calls it, and we are looking at the US. And those are markets that we think has a lot of potential to partner with banks and other providers, where we provide our software and we tightly couple it with the payment instrument of these banks. And these markets are great markets to be in. I mean, in terms of scope, scale, propensity to pay fees. So that's going to be the next big leap for Zaggle post IPO.
Awesome. And I'm just curious, how are you, as Avi, how are you feeling because, you know, we've heard about 21-year-old Avi who's kind of turning up to uni and falling in love, and then he gets his first job. We heard kind of the development of this person. And now this guy is about to take a company that he's been running for like 11 years to IPO as a human who's still young. Like, what do you think about life? What do you think about yourself?
I think it's to be honest, a little scary as well to go IPO, because you're suddenly going to come into the public led. There are a lot of compliances. There are a lot of expectations of the markets. The public markets are known to be fairly brutal, but it's extremely exciting, right? It's you take the plunge, you see how it goes, and I believe it's one life. And you got to experience new things. And I'm equally excited about our plans to go global in the coming years. I think I also have now realized what I'm not so good at and what I'm good at, right? And I'm going to focus more of my energies to build Zaggle in areas that I'm good at, which is to partner with banks, with customers, engage with external stakeholders. We fortunately have great people internally today to be able to build a business further, to build the bedrocks of the insides of the company in terms of people, in terms of processes, etc. And I'll let those folks do their job and get out of their way.
You know, I love what you're saying about working in your strengths, because actually that is the fundamental message of Tech for Non-Techies. And this is really what I want people to see in their careers, because I think some people, especially, very studious Chicago booth alumni, they think, oh crap, okay, I used to be, I don't know, a banker or a lawyer or a consultant. Now there's this whole tech thing, and now I must become a data scientist. And they hate it. They're not particularly, they force themselves to be good at it. But really, actually, what they should be is, I don't know, they should be developing relationships. They should be doing what you're doing. They should actually be much more people facing.
Right.
But they don't, because they think that, okay, in order for me to succeed in this digital age, I essentially have to force myself to be something that I'm not. And what I always say to people is that take your natural talent, whatever that is, add a digital skill set to it, and then that's how you build something remarkable, which is exactly what you've done. You've taken your natural skill set, which is, partnerships with Visa, partnerships with banks, because, I mean, that's what investors care about at IPO. That's how you expand internationally. Right. You marry that with a digital skill set, and then you work with people who are really good at doing the things that you never want to do.
Absolutely, Sophia. Bang on, and I couldn't have said it better, right? And the whole idea that you need to be good at everything is just impossible, right? You just need to focus on your strengths. And I think it's also to do with age. I think once you cross a certain threshold, right? Like I'm 45.
See, when did that happen? I was going to say, where did you get that wisdom?
Depends on each person, I think. But for me, I think once I started to get closer to my 40s, I started to realize that I can't do everything myself, for sure. I suck at some things really badly. I could actually see people in the company who are coming in, and some of the people who are with the firm for a while, actually step up, and when I gave them the space, do a fabulous job of things much better than I could have even thought of. And that's when I started to realize, hey, relax. You don't need to control everything. You don't need to try to do everything yourself. Actually, you're doing a disservice to your company by trying to, poke your nose in everything, right? So sometimes you're just better off letting other people run pieces that they are experts at. And you just be there to support them. And if there's a mistake, then you be willing to back them and you say, hey, mistakes happen with everybody, right? That's what they're looking for, that cover. They're looking for that shield, that in case things go bad, in spite of best intentions and efforts, that you are there to sort of support them. And as long as you're providing them that cover, they're just going to do wonders for the organization.
Awesome. Well, what a wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much, Avi. I always love catching up with you, and this has
Same
been a
here.
wonderful conversation.